Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and this video is a intro to Docker. Now, if you're not familiar with what Docker is, here's an analogy to help you understand technologies like Docker, Docker Compose, and Kubernetes. So imagine a world, it's not hard to imagine, where musicians travel from place to place playing the same song. Now, the thing is that to play the same song, they'd have to set up all their instruments, and each location, the instruments may have to be set up a little bit differently because of the outlets are too far, so they need another extension cord, and then even then, the song may not play completely identical because the acoustics are different, or one of the musicians are just not performing as well as they normally would. So basically, the setup is a little different everywhere you go, and the performance is slightly different everywhere you go. But eventually, they had audio recording, so you could record the song, and no matter where you were, you played the song. The song will never change because the recording doesn't change; it's a one-time thing. But you could play the recording, and it'd be exactly the same every time. That's what a Docker container is. It's a recording, more accurate, a photograph of the state of operating system of what's installed, like the language like Python, Ruby, whatnot, and your application that you can just run, and it just runs your application or creates an environment for you to work in. But here's the thing: you could create one Docker container that has your database running, your app running, but generally we always like to have a separation of concerns. So same thing with music. Sometimes you could create one really long medley of songs, but you would rather have multiple recordings of multiple songs. So you would create an album, and an album would have different songs that are kind of related and work together, and you would release that, and people would be able to play a whole album. That's what Docker Compose does. It allows you to take multiple containers. So let's say one container with my Node.js app, and another container that's Postgres to serve a database for that application, and allow them to work together to create essentially an album of containers that are related. Now, one album was never enough, right? We like to listen to different albums at different times. But it's really annoying to have to open the CD player, put in a new CD, especially if you're like if you own a bar. Okay, you're busy running the bar. You don't want to be switching CDs all the time for your patrons' musical sounds. So you wanted a process that kind of automated the switching of CDs, and they came up with jukeboxes. And jukeboxes would allow you sit there, user, and say, "Hey, I want to play this CD," and then the jukebox would then grab the appropriate CD and play it. That's what Kubernetes is. It kind of automates the process of dealing with containers and groups of containers, instead of you having to manually set up the container or the Docker Compose file every single time. Okay, and this makes deployment a lot easier because you're standardizing the state of a particular application regardless of the server, as long as they're running Docker. So it could be on Windows, Mac, or Linux. As long as you have Docker, that app's going to run the same time every time because that image has all the information. And then you can have multiple images work together with Docker Compose, and then you can automate the whole process with Kubernetes. Okay, so that's hopefully paints you a picture of sort of what the role of these things are. Now in this video, what I want to do is just give you the basics of Docker. Right now I have Docker and Docker Compose on my computer, so just to show you, Docker. So I have Docker installed on my computer. Cool. And I have Docker Compose. Cool. I'm just going to focus on Docker in this video. But basically there's plenty of Docker commands. First, we'll just start off with the basics. So there's Docker. So in my environment, I always have to do sudo. So sudo Docker images. What this does is just shows all the images that I currently have downloaded on my computer. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, and then I can see how big they are. So they take up space. But see, this is like Ubuntu Deno 1. This is just a sample, an image I have set up that has Deno installed. I think that one just kind of comes, it's like a test one that comes with, but I got one for Python, for Postgres, for Mongo, Node. Oh, and then these are, I think, I'm not sure what those are. Okay, and then these are ones related to a project that I was playing with yesterday, and this is just like a node test project, so I should go clean those out later. Cool. But let's say I want to play with this Ubuntu Deno container. Okay, I can just type in docker, so a sudo docker run. Okay, sudo docker run, and then I want to actually get in there, so I'm going to do IT, which stands for interactive. That's going to allow me to, it's going to run the container and allow me to kind of explore like I'm exploring a separate computer in its command line. So IT Alex Merced / Ubuntu Deno 1. So it's going to take a second. It's going to start up the container. And see, now I'm inside the container. I'm still using bash, but inside the container. Okay, so if I do like an ls-la, okay, see I can see all the systems, but these are not my computer system. These are inside this Docker environment. So now if I type in something like deno dash version, see it says it has deno installed. Let's see, this is nano installed. So let's see here, nano file.ts. Nope, nano is not installed. How about v file.ts? I don't think, because I think generally most of these images are bare bones. They're not there for you to do the actual editing. You'll copy the files into it, which I'll show you how to do that in a moment. Okay. Okay, so let's do this. Let's do cat. Oh no, echo console.log. Hello world. Let's change it this way. Console.log hello world, and we're gonna put that into a file called test.ts. Okay, so let's see if that file got created. There it is, test.ts. And then I am going to deno test.ts. Oh yes, like deno. Wasn't really mean test. I think it's deno run test.ts. It's been a while since I've used deno. Yep, there we go. So I compiled the file and ran hello world.ts. And now if I do ls, I should see a JavaScript file in there. No, it just did it temporarily. Okay, cool. So, and now if I want to kill this container, right now I can't really exit it, so I have to go into another window. Let me make that a little bit bigger. Okay, and then what I want to do is figure out what images do I have currently running. So I do sudo docker sudo docker ps, which is like my currently running processes. So I have this one currently running. Cool. Now what I want to do is get rid of it. So I copy the status number, and I'm going to do sudo docker kill, and that's going to kill the process. So that's kill. So if I go back to the other thing, see, I went back to my normal bash. So essentially what you're doing is you're sort of running a little container of a particular environment. Okay, now typically you're not doing what I just did, unless you could, if you just wanted to kind of play around with language. So like you wanted to create like just play with Python or Clojure or some sort of language without having to go install the whole thing. you could just get the proper. And how do you get all these images? Well, you go to the Docker Hub. So let's head over to the Docker Hub. So hub.docker.com. Here you can find images for everything. So that was the node. So this is a node image that I was just looking at. But let's say we want to talk about like Go. See, I can then Docker pull Golang. So then what I would do is I would just type in this code right here. Docker pull Golang. And then that's going to download this container, and then each of these are different versions of the container. So theoretically, you could kind of pull from those different versions. So it does end up taking space after you have so many different layers in a container, but you can always clean that up. Okay, so let me go cd back into my root, and then cd. Let's do a quick test. So cd development. We'll make a directory called Docker. Okay, in there, make a directory called Golang. Oh wait, I didn't cd in there. So cd Docker, and then make a directory called Golang, and then cd into Golang. So what I want to do here is I'm going to just make a very basic Go file. So I'm just do nano. Well, maybe that's not the best example. Yes, let's do a node one. Just as easier. cd. So let's do make dir node cd into node. Okay, so I'll just make, because I already have the node container installed and it's just quicker to do a script. Okay, so let's do this. I don't even need to bother with nano. I can just do what I did before. So let's just grab that command from before. Nope. Okay, fine. So let's just do echo or script nano hello.js. So nano hello.js, and we'll just do a console.log hello world. Yes. Now I could just run the file, so node hello.js, but yet assumes that I have Node installed on my computer. Okay. So what I could do is I can create in this file folder, I'll create a new file called Docker file. So nano Docker file. Okay, it's just called Docker file just like that. And then what I'm going to do is I say from, this is going to specify the container that I'm using. So I'm going to say from the node container. So that's going to pull the container from node. And if I don't already have it pulled onto my computer, it'll actually go to the Docker Hub and look for a container of that name. So as long as I have a Docker file that specifies it and I run that Docker file, it'll pull the appropriate images. Okay. So what I want is to start with the node container, and I want to copy the files that I currently have in my folder. So I'm going to say copy what's inside my current folder, where this Docker file is, that's the dot, and I want to copy it to the root of the container. So just copy it right to the main folder in the container. Okay. And then what I want to happen is, let's see here. I think if I wanted to run any particular commands, like right now I don't have a package.json, but if I wanted to like install all my dependencies first, I could do something like run npm install, and it'll run npm install before when it makes the container. So it'll install the dependencies and then commit that to the image. But I don't need to do that right now. But let's see here. Yeah, that's fine. And then cmd is just going to be the command that it runs. There's a bunch of different versions of this command, so I can also do like entry point. But I'm going to do command cmd, and this is going to specify the command that'll run when I start up the container. So what I will do is we're going to just say when we run this container, it's just going to do node hello.js. Okay, and then that's all this container is going to do. So it's going to take that node container, copy over the file, take a new snapshot, so take a new picture, and then whenever I run that container, it's going to run that command right away. Control X. Oops, Docker file. Okay, cool. So now I want to, the Docker file is not an image in itself, it's just the instructions on how to create the image. So I do sudo docker build, and then I want to build, and the thing is that's going to be in this folder. So I put a dot meaning build the Docker file in this folder. And then I need to tag it. So I'm going to tag it with Alex Merced / node test2. Okay. And this should work. So there it is. It's building, it's copying the files, and it's creating the container, and the container is just about created. Okay, so now I can run the container. So we'll do docker run Alex Merced / node, and that needs a sudo in front of it. Node test2. So I run that. It's going to run the container and then run that command, and see, it prints out hello world. And then just hangs. And then it's done because I didn't specify anything else. I didn't specify the IT flag saying, hey, let me go inside the command line. And I didn't specify, and then there's the command's done. So once it's done, it'll just kill the container. So if I do sudo docker ps to see if the process is still running, I don't see it running. Okay. And that's what Docker does. Okay, cool. So here's the thing. If you had Docker on your computer, but you did not have Node, you would be able to run that container and hello world would pop up onto your screen. You didn't need to have Node installed on your computer because the image includes the installation of Node. So it'll spin up that image that has Node installed and run that file. So that's cool. So now to show you sort of what I have here. So here I have an Express project. So basically just your standard Express server running on a port or whatever. And then here, again, I start with the node. I copied over my node project to the root of the container. Now the project naturally runs on port 3000. Okay. And then when I run the container, it's going to run node server.js, which runs the server. So let's say I want to expose that server. The thing is that it's running on port 3000 in the container. The container is like its own little world. So I need to expose that port because that's the port. So if I didn't put this expose command, it would just, the port would have no exposure to the outside world. There'd be no way for me to actually access that application. So now that I have that, what I can do is this. I can do sudo docker, and then I can run this particular thing, which I've already built, so I don't need to rebuild it. So sudo docker run, which is one is going to be Alex Merced / node test1. And then what I want to do is specify a port. So I'm going to say, hey, you know what, port 5500 on my machine. First /p for -p for port. So port 5500 on my machine is going to equal port 3000 in the container. And I want to be more specific. I'm going to say 127.0.0.0.1 colon. So this particular IP, local IP, this particular port, whenever I make a request here, send that request over to port 3000 in this container. So this way, it's as if I'm using the container. So then I hit enter on that, put in my password. And then that's eventually going to run. So I'm going to see my little command. There it is. Node not found. Oh, it didn't like the command. Binge node not found. Let's run the right command. Let's see here. Let me alter this. Entry point. Actually, I do think I need to rebuild it. Now that I think about it. Entry point. So docker sudo docker build dot dash tag Alex Merced / node test. I did make some changes since the last before I. There we go. So that's built. Now let's try running it again. There we go. So I'm listening on port 3000. So let me go to my browser and let's type in localhost. Well, first let's do 127. Cannot get, which is fine because there's no root route for that particular application. And see, it's working. Okay, I got the response I expected from that. Okay, and it's not because it's actually running on port 5500. Port 5500 is pointing to the container port 3000. So essentially that's how kind of you would deploy it. Okay, so that's pretty cool. And then you can, again, you can have multiple containers. Oh, actually I have to kill the process. So let me go back to my other thing here. Sudo docker ps. Let's take the process number, copy, sudo docker kill, and there we go. Okay, so that's, I think, a good introduction to sort of the world of Docker. There's plenty of images. You can use this to deploy all sorts of apps. So this is the great thing about this is, like, let's say you want to work in some sort of really obscure language. You just find a container that handles that language, and you can deploy to any service that supports Docker. Just send up your image, and they don't care that they don't have it set up for that language because it's all in the container. Okay, so it's overall very, very cool. So my name is Alex Merced from alexmerced.com. Have a great day and enjoy.